Sending you sending you the signal. So, again, thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here. And my name's Katie Powner. I live in Montana. I have 5 books out so far, and that were all with Bethany House. And my first book came out in 2020, which was not a great year to debut as an author. But one of the good things, the silver linings of the whole COVID thing was that a lot more options became available online, like what we're doing now. It became just a lot more accessible and common. And so I have that was something I could use, back in 2020. It was just then starting, like a Zoom like this was just starting to become a thing then. And we always say the other good thing that came out of it was they streaming high school games in school gyms became a really big thing. And that has been so great for us, especially in Montana. We're so spread out. It's a huge state. So you've got your team playing 3 hours away at a school. And now we can actually watch that stream of that game. We don't, because you can't always
Nice.
travel 3 hours
Yeah.
to watch your game. And so that was
Awesome.
another good thing that came out of it. And so that was when my first book came out. And then I had 5 books come out with Bethany House. And then they were um weren't able to offer me any more contracts at that point after that. And so I started looking at other publishers, kind of thinking about what I wanted to do. Because all of my books with Bethany House, if you've read any of them, you know that they're all kind of small town, rural type stories. They're general fiction, contemporary, and very character driven. Also really setting heavy because I really like playing into the whole Montana setting. And so those were all kind of that. But then when Bethany House and I were kind of reached an end to our relationship and it was amicable, it was just time to move on. Um, I was able to kind of think, well, what else do I want to do? Like this is the kind of story I've been doing, and I like doing that. But this felt like kind of the fork in the road where, well, now you could do something else. This would be the time to choose a different genre, maybe, or just take a different angle. And so I have a book coming out in a couple weeks, and so with a different publisher, with Kriegel, and it's a women's fiction. And women's fiction and general fiction do overlap. They're similar, but I don't consider them to be the same. And so it's women's fiction about a foster mom. And then I have a book coming out in July with a different publisher, which is actually a general market publisher. And that book is considered like uplit book club fiction, basically. And that will be my first then general market experience, which again was kind of made possible because, one door kind of closed, kind of that journey kind of came to an end. So then I was able to kind of think, what else could we try? What do we want to do? The Lord opened up different avenues to take, different paths. And so these next 2 books are quite a bit different for me. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because they're quite a bit different than those 5 that I kind of had put out kind of one year at a time. So it's kind of untested waters, but I'm excited about it. And I think, so what we were going to be talking about tonight about turning fact into fiction and about using like your everyday life in your stories. I think that's something then that has, even though like I've kind of really kind of switched directions and different genres, that whole idea of really using kind of your everyday life, using those everyday moments in the story is something that I think has really carried over, even though it's totally different kind of story now. Um, because that's something that like I really love to do. And I also just have found, like when I first started to, I've always been a writer, but when I first was like gonna try an actual novel, because that's that's, you can write lots of things and then trying to actually write an actual novel, that's like a whole different. So when I first wanted to attempt that, I was really surprised by how little I had to make up, if that makes sense. Because you think you're making up a story. You think I have to make this up. Well, in a lot of ways, you don't have to make that much up. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. The material is all there. It's all around you. It's ready to be used. And there's lots of great material out there in your own life already waiting. So before we kind of dive into that, does anybody have any questions about what I've shared?
So were your first books considered general fiction then?
Yeah.
And yeah. And so then you switched to women's. And when is your next book coming out? You said it's coming out right away.
Yeah, on the 21st. So I think
Oh,
that's
like
weeks from tomorrow, right? Or
Nice.
exciting. All right. Well,
yeah,
I'll have
2 weeks.
questions about that afterwards, like
Yeah.
your book launch, the whole book launch thing.
Yeah, totally. For sure.
The house
Um,
just decided they weren't doing Western general fiction, or just they're just,
um, they they just were not able to make it work financially because the books were not selling, basically. Um, it's just really tough, general fiction, especially because there's no romance or suspense or any of those genre specific type things. Um, I think it's harder to market because if you have a romance book like historical romance, contemporary romance, whatever, people know what that is. Like they know what they're getting and they know I like romance, so I'll like this. You know what I mean? And with
yeah.
general fiction, I think people aren't quite as sure what they're getting. So they're a little bit more hesitant to try it, if that makes sense. And
And the more
so,
specific the market, the more buyers you can funnel into that market, right?
yes, exactly. And general fiction is very general. So the market is a little bit more ambiguous, maybe. And
Yeah.
so I think that was an issue. Um, and they aren't known for general fiction. That's not something that they really have done much of. They're known for historical romance is their big thing, and then romantic suspense. Those are kind of their two biggest things. And they do great at those, and those books sell really well, and they market those really well. Um, but I think you're trying to reach a totally different audience in a different way when you're trying to sell general fiction, and that's not something they have done a lot of. So I think, there's a lot of factors involved, but
That's very interesting. Thank you. Yeah, that's good insight.
yeah,
Hopefully, this next publisher and your next genre is going to go really well.
I hope so too. Yeah, that's always the hope. I think authors are eternal optimists. I think you kind of have to be a writer.
Oh.
Yeah. What else? Do you have any other questions? I'm
Did
open
you
to talking
find
about anything.
writing the new books kind of stretched a different part of your brain, or was it like, did you feel like your author voice is like a little bit different than their previous 5 books with Bethany House?
For the general market one, yes, because the general market one, I did not realize how hard that was going to be to write a book because I still wanted it to be clean, obviously, and
Mhm.
to be meaningful and have truth in it and like have a purpose and the story has a purpose. But to do that without just basically relying on saying, and then
The
God did
gospel,
this
yeah.
and that,
Yeah.
you know, not being able to use that, then it took a lot more work, a lot more, I think, creativity almost to kind of find a way to still make the story present truth, but not be able to use, kind of the standard things that we would use
Yeah.
about faith and growth and the Bible and things like that. Um, so that was a challenge. That was a big challenge. And I was surprised how hard that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was your new book coming out still Western and based on Montana, or I mean, you're saying it's women's fiction, so
So I mean, it's set in Washington, and what I always say with women's fiction is, and this is what I feel like makes women's fiction different from general fiction. Like I said, how they overlap, but they're not the same. I think because women's fiction zooms in a lot more on the relationships and the women and their growth. So the setting typically isn't as big a deal. A lot of times you don't necessarily even really know where this is taking place, as opposed to that general fiction kind of zooms out a little bit and kind of has a bigger view of like the community as a whole, and the setting plays a bigger part. And it's really clear like where this is taking place, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the women's fiction, I mean, like I said, it's set in Washington, but you don't really, it could kind of be anywhere, if that makes sense, because you're so kind of focused, zoomed into those kind of relationships and that day to day with the women, that the where just doesn't really matter as much.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very
That's how I
interesting.
view the difference between the two genres.
Oh, interesting.
Any other questions?
I'm gonna have book launch questions, but you can save them
Okay.
till later if you like.
All
It's
right.
all good.
Yeah. And yeah, just, I mean, as we go, write down anything that you want to bring up. We can talk about anything you want. Did you guys get the notes, the handout?
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
So
Already been
great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
scribbling
So
on it.
that's what we're
Oh,
going to
that
go
was
through
great.
now. And you don't need those, but it is kind of handy to have sort of the outline. So if we want to look at those and move to those,
Thank you.
like I said, I really have found a lot of benefit from and really enjoyed using that everyday life around you stuff in stories. And so if we just want to go straight to the first section in our notes that says looking around, that's like one of my favorite things is to, and I think that this is something then that I've grown a lot in since I started writing novels, is that observation of just being more aware of and observing more what's going on around you, paying more attention to how people interact or what they're wearing. Like I've never like cared what people are wearing, but I started paying more attention to it because it's interesting, and you might notice something interesting, and it gives people real life in your stories if you can give them a real specific outfit, for example, that you saw at the grocery store, maybe, or something. And so I started becoming a lot more observant and looking around. And so, in order to draw inspiration from life, though, you have to get out there and live, right? So, writing is obviously a solitary endeavor, and you spend a lot of time at your desk and a lot of time at the computer. And that's not life, and that's not living. And so to kind of fill that well, I encourage people to really to get out there, go to the store, go to the airport, go to the mall, go for walks in your neighborhood, and really look around, look at what's going on around you. But also just do things like join a book club, or you know a class, take a class, have friends over for dinner. Like you want some material for dialogue or whatever, you have some friends over for dinner, right? We have to be living our life in order to fill our story with life so that it feels like life. So that means it's time to get out of your comfort zone. Because most of us, then, if we are always in our comfort zone, we'd already kind of mined everything we can from that probably by this point in our lives. We've all been around a few years, so we've mined most of those things already. Maybe now we need to start looking outside of that comfort zone a little bit to other things that we've never tried, or types of people maybe that we don't normally talk to. Striking up a conversation at the library with somebody that is not, maybe you don't know them, or it's not, maybe not your age, maybe a young mom or something. And that, like I said, that might take you out of your comfort zone, but I think that brings back reward if you can do that. Can anyone think of any examples of a time where they've done this or thought about doing it.
Well, I think
I
so.
did it today.
Like,
Oh,
or
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Deanne.
Lisa.
Oh, I was just saying I did it today at Costco. We were standing waiting for the pharmacy, and this guy came by with his shopping cart, and we were being respectful and leaving the person at the counter some room. And he came right between me and this other lady and the people at the counter. And we kind of looked at him, and he slowly went on through. And I turned to the lady next to me and I said, "Don't worry. If he'd have stopped and gotten in line, I would have looked at him and said, 'Excuse me, sir, but cutting in line is frowned upon in this establishment.'"
What did
I
she
should have
say,
made her
Lisa?
What did
What
she
did she
say?
say?
Yeah,
laugh.
she
She
laughed.
just
Yeah,
laughed and she goes, "Well, somebody's got to do it."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Those interactions are priceless. And if you have a good one, write it down.
Yeah, really.
I
Yeah.
was full of it today. So
You're a
Deanna,
spitfire, Lisa.
yeah.
what?
You're a spitfire.
Oh yeah, it's something like that. What were
Deanne,
you
were
gonna
you
say, Deanne?
say?
Well, I was thinking sometimes life forces you out of your comfort zone because we had a flood in our house, and so we lived in a hotel for 3 months. And
Oh,
now, like, I know so much more. Like, I feel like I could write a book set in a hotel because you just learn the staff, the routines, like,
Yeah.
you feel like you're a part of it. And then also, my 11-year-old son loves to find new hobbies on YouTube. And so, like, we went rock hounding for the first time, like, out in the Arizona desert. And same
yeah.
thing.
Which is probably something you never would have
Never
done.
choose
Yeah,
to do that. No.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's a great example. And that living in a hotel thing, I mean, that would be a great story, you know? And yeah, I mean, when would you ever do that unless you were kind of forced to? Yeah. So that's a great example. Yeah.
Family
Um,
gives you all kinds of stuff
yeah,
you can do.
family for sure.
We we
Kids.
had Rice Krispie treats at Easter just for the heck of it for easy fun dessert. And my son-in-law is diabetic and he eats some of our treats and some of them he doesn't eat. So he told my husband he wanted a smaller Rice Krispie treat the second round. And Jim, being the character that he is, cut off a piece that had about 6 Rice Krispies in it, and he held it out to Greg and he says, "How's this?"
Yeah.
The stuff that really would just make a book priceless
Yeah. Because
because it's the
those little
Yeah.
details give it
Yeah.
life.
yeah.
Yeah, because it
Mm.
is life.
Yeah.
Those are great
Yeah.
examples. So let's now brainstorm then together. Those were all good ideas of where we can find these kinds of things in our day-to-day life, but where else, because it doesn't even necessarily have to be something happening to you. Where else when in your just kind of day-to-day life can you find ideas and inspiration for stories?
Like movies or TV shows.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Be like, oh, I really like that angle, you know, or you might be like, well, I really like this movie, but what if they flipped it this way, you know, and then that's your idea that you write down. Yeah, that's a great one. What else?
Yeah.
Coffee shops or like grocery stores. I love eavesdropping.
Yes.
Just hearing random things and then you can make a whole story out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I was decluttering something today and I found an old, like a photo album of my father's with all these postcards from San Francisco and Hawaii. And the postcards were really vintage. And I'm like, oh my goodness, look at these people in these postcards and look at the cars and the postcards. And it was interesting. And I'm like, what can we do with these postcards? You know?
Yeah, that's really cool.
It was interesting. I'm still trying to figure out what to do, but it sparks an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Even if the story, what if the story was about finding the postcards and trying to figure out what to do with them? You know?
That's a story.
Yeah.
Well, what
Right. I
about
immediately Googled, does anybody collect postcards? Well, there's a whole postcard society that
Really?
Oh,
collects postcards, believe it or not. So yes, I'm
yeah.
like, okay,
I bet
learn
that,
something.
well, that's so, yeah, I mean, and I don't know anything about that, so that would be really interesting. Like you could have a main character who's a postcard collector. Maybe they're super into it, you know? They'd probably have like online clubs and stuff, I bet. So,
They do. Facebook groups. Yep. It's a
wow.
thing.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Or
Yeah.
how about if you're stuck, like say you're trying to get parent-child interactions, but you're not really sure of the correct way to portray it when people, kids are a certain age, go to the park and watch kids and their parents. You're going to get a good idea of how different kids at different ages act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, or how about one of our stupid pastimes, but we enjoy it, is walking through cemeteries trying to get ideas for weird names
Yeah.
and looking at those headstones and wondering, oh, this person died when they were 15. What was
Hmm.
their story? Or this person
Yeah.
died when they were, 99, but they were born in the late 1700s.
Wow. Yeah. And
Because, yeah, and
yeah.
when they died in the late 1800s. And you're like, man, think
Wow.
of what they saw.
That would have been like,
Yeah.
yeah, because every headstone tells a story.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's a really great one. Um, I think also just like your newspaper, your local newspaper sometimes can have really interesting, little articles or like the police reports in there. Well, I live in a small town. We have a small kind of rural community, so our paper always has you just never know what's going to be in there. So that can be super interesting. I've definitely used that more than once, stuff from the paper in my books. So that's one for sure. Does anyone else
Well,
have any other ideas?
newspaper
Yeah, the
archives.
archives. Yeah, right. Yes.
I belong to a Facebook group called Grown and Flown, and it's for people with kids between 15 to 25. And it kind of talks about all the high school experience and the college experience and just dabbles into marriage. So, and proms, it's huge. It's over 200,000 people. But if anybody posts anything, there's always 100 comments, and everybody's opinion is so different. And I learned so much from just reading the comments and the thing, it touches your heart. And then, well, they should have done that, or I totally understand why. And you get both sides of the story. It's really actually very interesting,
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah,
Sorry.
Huh,
fascinating,
that's a great one. The comment section. That's a great
amazing.
one.
And when they find some unknown drug paraphernalia and they put it on, they're like, what? And then they get all these
All
comments and all
kinds
these
of
opinions,
information. Yeah, probably
and a
more than
lot of
they
them,
ever wanted to know.
yes, and they're like, it's nothing, that's just this candy. And this one's like, some horrible drug. And then you learn all about the drug. You're like, I didn't even know that was a thing. It's like, oh my goodness. It's wild.
My,
That
my husband is
sounds
really
wild.
good at watching the commercials for the drugs and say he'll pick out one or two of the side effects.
Side effects.
He'll be like, "Oh, so you're gonna grow a third foot out of your head, and that's
Yeah,
not a problem."
but you won't have psoriasis. Yes, you can. My husband does that too. Yeah, those are all great ideas.
Don't worry, I won't
Good.
share what he says about the Viagra commercials.
Yeah.
It's funny, but I'm not gonna share it.
But maybe you can use it. Yeah, so those are all really great ideas. So I think you guys already kind of have this down of all these ways to get ideas, all the things that are going on around you that um, can bring inspiration. So now we're going to talk about when to use people, places, and events from your everyday life in your stories. So when is that appropriate? So first of all, it must be fair use. So fair use can refer to the actual legal, like copyrights, like public domain, fair use of materials. And that's something you do need to be aware of. Even like a funny sign that you might see or something, you have to make sure that you have fair use in order to use that in your story. So that's important. And also fair use would mean that it's not libelous, because you don't want to have any libel in your story. And that can be a little tricky when you are, if you're using an inspiration of real people that real things going on, you can do it, you can use it. and you can use it truthfully, but not with libel involved. Then you'll get yourself into trouble. But so another when is it must serve a purpose. So you're not going to just throw your neighbor Gary in the story because you don't like him. So you just want to, you have like, you throw Gary in there so that you can kind of like get back at him or something. There has to be a reason for him to be in the story, right? There must be some purpose for it rather than just, or like maybe there's like a certain place that you really like, and you just really want to have this special fountain or whatever in your story because you love it, because it means something to you and you love it. So you want it to be there. Well, it needs to serve a purpose. Just because you love it doesn't mean it deserves a place in your story unless it has a reason for being there. So sometimes you have to put in then extra work. If you really, really want that fountain in there, then you have to find some way to make it matter to be in there. And you can do that. But if you don't do that, then then it only means something to you. And that's great for you, but we have to think about our readers. They want to know why the fountain is in the story. Because you already know why, because I love it. That's why it's there. And there has to be another reason so that it means something to your readers as well. And then you must have a clear conscience when using anything from your life or from around you. And for this, prayer is essential to keep your conscience nice and sharp. And I think this is really important because, again, back to neighbor Gary, right? You want to have a clear conscience about why and how you're using a specific, especially a person that you know in a story. And if you don't quite feel a clear conscience about what you're saying about that person or how you're using them, then you shouldn't do it. So, because I think it's always better to err on the side of caution with that. But if you do have a clear conscience, then I think, and this where prayer comes in again, to help you discern whether or not it's appropriate to use or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've wrestled through this a lot because, like I said, I use people and places around me a lot, and so I've wrestled through that a lot. And there's times where I have felt that I have felt fine about using it, and then other times where I just could not ever quite feel clear. So then, just not gonna do it because it's not worth it.
Do you still use the disclaimer like none of this is meant to reflect real life? You know how a lot of fiction has that?
Well, yes, because the publisher, I mean, at least so far, all my publishers, that's part of their standard title page, or the copyright page.
Yeah.
That's part of their standard page format, is to have that in there, even if the story is like inspired by something, a true story, they will still say that in there. Yeah. So yes, for sure.
And then do you get permission? Like if you have friends and family who read your things, are they going to be like, oh my gosh, that's Kate, or
Yeah,
oh, that's our old dog, and
I would do that if it was something that like it was like if part of it was their own personal story that I didn't feel I could share, without their permission, I would do that. But if it's more, if it's still like from my perspective, my story of seeing their whatever it is, as opposed to it being from their personal story, I don't do that because for one thing, you don't want to explicitly say, then that explicitly points out that this is you or whatever, so then they know for sure, as opposed to them just being like, well, that's sort of similar to me or whatever, then you kind of remove any doubt if you ask them. And then for another thing is, at the end of the day, like I said, if your conscience is clear, it's your story. not theirs. And so it can be tricky to, in a way, invite them into it by asking them. They'll be like, well, but yeah, but you have to do it like this, or, but you have to make it this way, or, you know what I mean? So that does get tricky.
Have you had anyone flat out ask you if it's them in your stories?
I've had people ask if it was somebody else.
Okay.
They're like, so are you talking about so and so? Yeah. Because especially like all my like small town Montana stories, those are fictional towns, but they are definitely based on like all the little towns that I know of. And a lot of these little towns are filled with real characters, And so sometimes, especially local, for like local kind of landmarks and things and local kind of famous people, that's when then people like my friends and things will be like, are you talking about so and so? So that does happen quite a bit here locally. Yeah. So again, you have to be careful. You have to make sure. I have to make sure that then if they ask me that, um, I don't have to be embarrassed about it. I can just say, yeah, it is, and they're like, cool. So it doesn't have to be something that I don't want to be afraid of someday somebody finding out. You know what I mean? So if I feel like someday if somebody asked me and I would be embarrassed, or I would feel bad about being honest that yes, it was, and then I probably shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. So again, that's why prayer is essential. I pray a lot about those things. Sometimes it's just a little detail. But you want to pray about that and make sure, like, do I have a clear conscience about this? And is there a clear path forward for this with, discernment? And if not, it's not worth it. Yeah, like I said. So then that was kind of like when to use the people and places. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to use people, places, and events from your everyday life in your stories. So sometimes you can use the information as is. So that means just write what you have, right? As it is, you can use it that way. Especially if it's something kind of generic, or something that would happen in any small town, or, like a redhead getting into a car wreck or something like that. That can be used just as it is. You don't have to change anything about that because that's generic enough, if that makes sense. Or if it's something that's common enough experience, then you can use that as is. And then just because it happened to be, you happen to get the idea from somebody like your neighbor or somebody at the library. So you're thinking of that person. But if it's kind of generic, nobody else is going to be thinking of that person. They're going to be thinking of the person at their library, because that's a very common experience. Yeah. So then you can use it just as it is. But sometimes you must alter the details, right? So tell me, what kind of details might you change?
Gender.
Yeah. Yep. That easily makes it kind of changes it enough, the gender for sure. What else?
Well, the name,
How about the
of course.
location?
Yep, the name, the location. The location can be a big one for sure. I think the age can make a big difference, changing the age. What else?
Season it happened in, season or time, like everybody knows a big car crash happened in December, make it in June or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because maybe in December and it was because of the ice. So then you have it be in June and it's because of a deer, something like that. Yeah, that's a great example. Things like their relationship status, like if they're married, you can have them be maybe not married or vice versa. And that can really kind of change kind of the perception of the character. So that can be a way to do it too. Lots of things that can be adjusted. And sometimes you maybe have to do kind of all those things if you're really feeling, you need to change. And sometimes just kind of one or two of those details is enough, so that just is very much circumstance by circumstance. But so then sometimes you will only use the essence of the person, place, or event. So that would be like something happens, there's a specific thing, you're like, that is such an interesting whatever. But maybe you're not really able to use any of those details specifically, so you can use sort of the essence of what happened. And it could be, and then, like, for example, something that happens maybe in a relationship, you can put that fight or whatever into a completely different relationship, like maybe a brother and sister or something that's not even related to how you saw it, but the essence of it is the same. So that again is circumstance by circumstance. But a lot of times, if something is really interesting, or a person is really interesting, maybe you can think about, well, what is it that's so interesting and intriguing about this? And can I just use that, the essence of that? Or do I actually need this specific person or this specific place? Or can it just sort of be boiled down to sort of a theme even?
Can you make that a personality quirk? You
Yeah.
know, where it's something that they do, but it could be anybody who did it, not necessarily the person you're thinking of. My
Right.
specific thing is my husband loves to, on the fly, and he's a genius at it, changing song lyrics. Okay. We were in a
And see,
diner
my
one
husband
night.
does that too. I think our
Yeah.
husbands would be friends.
Yeah. But we were sitting in a diner one night and we decided to share a piece of pie, and it was key lime pie for stupidness. And the song Sweet Caroline came on, and Jim started singing Sweet Key Lime Pie.
Yeah.
And that would be the kind of thing that you could give that quirk to a character, and nobody would know that you were talking about my husband.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the
Because
essence
it's
of
just
that,
something anybody.
Yeah.
yeah. And the essence of that is his personality is kind of like fun and spontaneous. So that's what you're using, out of it. So yeah, that's a great example. So in our last section, it talks about telling the truth about real life. So to be authentic, you must be honest. And I think it's really tempting to sugarcoat people or places that we love, right? So the places and people around you that you love and that are interesting to you, your grandma or whatever, and you love them. And so there's a temptation to kind of give them all the good qualities and maybe not want to give them some of those realistic other qualities that make them a well-rounded character. So that's one of the challenges with using somebody that you are familiar with, is that you want to be so gentle with them. It's harder to be honest. But in order for that character and that story to feel authentic, you have to tell the truth. So the truth is not always good things. There's always flaws, or mistakes. So that's something to be aware of when you're using, and this happens like with places too, like say Montana, like I love Montana and I want in my story for it to come across really well and for everybody to love it, but there's a lot of dark sides to living in Montana too. There's a lot of, like, for example, we have the second highest drunk driving fatality rates in the country and also second highest suicide rates. Those are not good things, those are not good things, but I don't want to hide those things or gloss over those things. I kind of want to, like I'm tempted to, because I want people to love Montana when they read about it and they read about the ranch and stuff. I want them to love it, but that's not authentic if I don't also talk about the other things. Right. So, So then another point is just, and we have talked about this already, but when in doubt, leave it out. It's never worth it if you're not sure. It's never going to be worth it. And so when in doubt, leave it out, even if it's true, even if you're going to write it exactly how it happened and everything about it's true. So no one can ever sue you for libel because it's true or whatever. But if you're not sure, yeah, then it's not, then just leave it out. So now I just want to give a few examples of kind of ways that all of this has played out in my own kind of books and stories. And then I'd love if you guys have some examples too. So I mentioned newspaper articles, right? So I have like 3 times, I think, yeah, 3 times taken articles that I've like literally cut out from our local newspaper that I have saved that I kept kind of at my desk hoping someday I could use it, and then ended up putting them in a novel. And one of them had to do with an article about mental health resources for ag workers in Montana. And it was about basically surveys that they had done to try to figure out what's the best way to get those resources to ag workers because they aren't likely to seek them out themselves. And so that ended up, Christine probably especially has it fresh in her mind because of the book you just read, that ended up being Anita's, in that book, her kind of special project and her passion, that whole mental health for ag workers aspect. I gave that to her because when I read that article, I was like, this is really important. This is really cool. And so I ended up giving that to her as her thing. So
that really added reality to the story because it was
because it
was so authentic. You could just see, obviously there's no way you could have made that up. That had to be real stuff. It was really, it rang true. It was interesting. Yeah,
and I didn't make it up at all. I just kind of used the article and then researched more and used all that, and so I didn't have to make it up at all. And then in Come Around Ranch also, then there's a little subplot involving a wolf, and that also came from newspaper, because here in Montana, wolves, and like whether they're on the list or not and whether they should be hunted or not is a really big controversy. It's a really big debate around here, largely because there's so many cattle farms and wolves don't get along. So it's a really big deal around here. And so there was an article about that. And so then I also used that in that book.
Yeah.
And then one other time was years ago, years before I wrote the story, there was an article about a guy who he went fishing, got bit by a snake, and ended up walking to the nearest house he could find. And the lady kind of panicked and took him to the hospital, which was really far away because this was in the middle of nowhere. So then someone came looking for the lady and found that her house, her purse had been left and she was missing, and they thought that she'd been kidnapped. So then they put out a missing person for this lady. Meanwhile, she had taken him to the hospital where then he got treatment and then learned that, he had like 4 hours before he had 4 hours to get the antivenom before it would damage him like permanently. And so he was all miffed because he was having a really good fishing day and he wished he would have waited a little bit longer before he went to get help. And that just was a great story. That's exactly what happened in the article. And I cut that out because I knew I'm going to use that someday. And so when it came in to my book, Where the Blue Sky Begins, and in Where the Blue Sky Begins, it pretty much happens just like that. So, and I changed people's ages and stuff like that. But basically just because that story writes itself, I just used it exactly as it was because it was such a great story. Yeah. So those are some examples from newspaper articles. Another example is like a neighbor of mine has a stoma, a urostomy bag, and I have never known anybody who had one before. and he's an older man and we're friends with him. And I didn't even notice it for a while, because it's under his shirt typically. And then I started to see it sometimes because we'd hang out. And I was just like, I have never known a person who had one. I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about what it's like to have one. I'm going to give a character one because this should be something maybe we need to talk about more because I've never seen it in a book. I've never heard people talking about it.
Yep.
So that's another example of that's an example kind of what I was talking about of the essence of something, So like it didn't really matter who it was or anything like that. It was the idea of giving somebody that disability so that we could talk about what that would be like and how they would live like that.
I'm going to do
The
that.
idea of it.
Yeah. I'm going to do that in the book I'm currently writing because I'm writing about the paralytic whose friends tore through the roof to lower him to Jesus. And since I was a nurse before I became a writer, I have seen lots and lots and lots of paralyzed people. I've dealt with how you turn them, how you have to do whatever you need to do with them, and how they develop bed sores and stuff. And they wouldn't have known any of that. They wouldn't have known to prevent contractures, la da da.
Right.
So I'm going to use all of that on him. Poor thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great. Yeah.
But you don't know how long he was paralyzed. It doesn't say in the Bible. It just said that he was.
Right.
So I'm going to have him paralyzed for about a year. So he's going to really undergo a very dramatic transformation in the space it took him to lay on the mat and leap into the air.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So what other things, since I gave you some of my examples, what other things can you think of maybe that you have used or that as you're thinking about it, you realize I could use that?
I'm actually just starting in the fiction world, and I'm actually leaning towards a pen name just because some of the stories I want to tell, like about being a veteran wife, and there's just I want to tell the whole truth, but I don't necessarily want my name attached to it.
Yeah.
Even just for the beginning process and like the first couple books, because I self-publish, I think just almost giving myself more creative space with a pen name and then
Yeah.
changing things, but just more freedom.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely, especially for that situation. And that seems like something that you'd have a lot of material to draw from in that. So there's a lot there to use for sure. What else has anybody used? Maybe a person that they, a family member maybe, or somebody's kind of personality or something that they found themselves giving one of their characters, giving to their character.
Well, it's getting a little late on the East Coast here. I might be past thinking up these great
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, and that's okay if you don't have examples, but it's definitely something to think about because I think it really does give characters more life and authenticity if they are real people. And it also, in a way, can save you, from a lot of, sometimes you're kind of sitting there thinking about, you kind of get stuck and you're like, what does this person look like? And just you can get wrapped up in that and kind of get stuck on that sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you have in your mind this very real picture of this very real person that's kind of your inspiration, a lot of times that can help kind of get you through that writer's block too, because all the material's right there.
Yeah, this has been super helpful. Great. I really appreciate the download and the walkthrough on it. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
no, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll end with one more note is something I was thinking about was sometimes you want to maybe just pay homage to a place or a person as opposed to using them. For example, like the little town that I live in, I wanted to pay homage to to it, but you don't want to, I don't want to like use the name of it or something because, you know, that's a little bit too specific. So our exit is exit 288. We have one exit and it's exit 288. So I used 288 as the name of the highway in the story. So then anyone from around here is gonna see that and get it, you know?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know, you know, for you it's just the name of the highway. But for anybody in Montana, then they kind of pick up on that homage to, you know, my hometown. And so that's another thing that kind of is a fun way to use the things, you know, that are important to you and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
fun.
so yeah.
Good idea.
So does anybody have any questions or thoughts about this specifically before we move on to whatever else you want to talk about?
Do you have a process? I love hearing how writers' brains think, of like capturing everyday things and like organizing it and
I mean, I always have a notebook, you know, in my purse or my diaper bag or whatever I have. You have to have a notebook. I don't have a smartphone. So I think because a lot of people probably do maybe just they can maybe record themselves real quick or they can make a little note on their phone real fast or something. Um, I have this flip phone right here. So um so I have an actual physical notebook and pen with me anywhere that I go so that I can make those notes. As far as organizing, it's definitely not organized. It's just snippets everywhere in all my notebooks. And I think, but when I'm like getting ready to start a new story, or I'm wanting to brainstorm an outline or something, I will then go back through and just start reading through the notebooks. Um, and it'll be like, oh, so and so said this at the baseball game, or it'll describe an outfit that I saw at the airport, and I'll just read through that because a lot of times that will just spark ideas. And a lot of times I might have wrote it a long time ago, maybe, you know, so I might have forgotten all about it. So then when I go back and I read it, it's like a new idea, and so it can like start a whole new idea. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's organized, but I definitely always try to be prepared with my pen.
thank you. I do have to jet to my son's soccer game, but I made Lisa host, so and I'll listen to the
Oh,
end of this. But thank you so much, Katie. This is really good.
yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
All right, anything else, or if you want to talk about some other things, that's fine too.
I mean, tell us about. Well, I have a question before book. Like a lot of authors write their first book, and that first one never gets published. Did your first novel get published or not? Or
So, so I ended up writing 4 books. Then my fourth book is the book that got me my agent, but it didn't sell. And then my 5th book was my first published book. So it was actually my 5th. And so yeah,
it's really common, actually. That
yeah,
seems so common.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And I
interesting.
think a big part of that is just experience. I mean, you know, if you've never written a novel before and it's your first novel, the chances of it being ready, you know, are probably pretty
Yeah.
small because
Yeah.
you've never done it. You have to learn, you
Yes.
know,
hmm
you have to learn what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what are you doing for your book launch? Do you have a book launch team? Is it going out? I mean, the 21st, that's coming right up. What's the name of
Yeah.
your new book?
So the new book is called Birds on a Wire. And the this is the first time. So as I mentioned, that I have a new publisher for this one. So this is the first time working with them, and they actually provide a launch team manager for me, which is not something I have ever had before. That my
Nice.
publisher never gave me before, and so I'm like, this is really cool. I like this a lot. So they actually provide a manager, and she then is in charge of the team and the team tasks and organizing it and like making the Facebook group and all that stuff. And so that's been really different. And so the recruiting period for the team is actually happening right now. I think tomorrow is the last day. So if anyone is interested in reading it, you could actually sign up for the team by the end of tomorrow, and you'd get an e-copy right away to read. So if you are interested, and so the other difference is, and all the teams I've had before, the publisher was very kind of limited of like this, we only want this many people.
Yeah.
Because we're only going to provide this many copies. There's a maximum, you know. And then for this one, they kind of take a different approach and are kind of like, the more the merrier. Let's just have 100 people and just go for it. And so that's been really interesting too, to kind of not have to, in the past, you had to almost be a little more picky about who could be on the team or whatever. And that was just because the publisher had their own, you know, approach. So then this time it's kind of like, I don't have to do that at all. It's sort of just like anybody who wants to sign up can sign up. And that's been really kind of fun. So then as far as what the team is going to look like, I'm not 100% sure because my team manager is going to be in charge of most of that, but she will have, there's 3 weeks worth of tasks. So like the week before launch, the week of launch, and then the week after launch, I think those 3 weeks. And she has tasks each week. And then there's like a prize at the end of each week that's given to a random team member who was participating. And then there's a grand prize at the very end for any, you know, that's just randomly from a team member grand prize. So that is kind of fun. That's not something I've done before in this way. And so I'm kind of excited to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do then? So it's great you got a launch team and you must have things you have to do, right, leading up as well?
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I will be participating in the team. You know, I'll be on the Facebook group commenting and interacting. I'll be providing the prizes, and I'll be doing like a Facebook Live with them at the very beginning to kind of launch those 3 weeks. And then I just personally on my own will be just doing a lot more posting than normal. I don't typically post a ton online because I'm not really into it, and it takes a lot of time. And I don't love that part of it. But so leading up to a release, though, I try to get on there more. You know, you have to put out all the reminders and stuff. And then another thing that I'll be doing is locally setting up like events locally, like at my library, a book signing at the Barnes and Noble, that kind of stuff, to actually do in-person things too. So
Wish you all the best. Hope it's going to be exciting. Exciting month anyway, for sure.
Be busy. Yeah, it's always busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, should get a local baker to decorate books with telephone poles and maybe 2 birds sitting on a wire.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like cookies or something that people can purchase at the launch.
Yeah, that would be cool. I have done the thing where they print the cover of the book on the cookie. Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that. Bethany Turner
Yeah.
did that for one of her launch parties. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've done that before, and I don't know how they do that, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Random question. I love your red Converse shoes. Those are so cute. How do those like get to be part of your author, persona, or your author, part of just who you are?
Well, it started with my grandma because back in the day, she was the one into the red shoes, and she would buy everybody a pair of red Converse. And then we were supposed to wear those anytime that we had a family gathering, like camp out or whatever, we would wear them. And then when she, you know, so we'd do the like tall to small picture and stuff, and we'd be wearing the shoes. And so she then, when my oldest son was born, she got him his first pair of shoes, a little tiny pair of red Converse. And that was then the last pair she bought, because then she passed away not long after that. And so then I had those little red shoes, the little pair, and then I had my pair. And so, and then because that grandma also happened to be the person who like was the biggest, probably like writing encourager and book lover in my life. She was always the one like buying the books and like reading the books. And so because of that, I wanted to sort of then use that red shoes kind of, we're talking about homage, kind of an homage to her. And so then I
Yes,
gave
yes,
so I put the little
yes,
pair of shoes on Moulin, my stuffed cow, my
yes.
mascot. Seen her?
Mm-hmm.
So she wears
Yes, I
the
have.
little pair, and then I wear my pair. And
Yes.
it's kind of an homage to my grandma, and then also like me just carrying on the tradition of the red shoes. So
I
Well, that's
love
really
that.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
such a
so
cool story. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So the
did.
other thing is, in every one of my books, there is a pair of red shoes somewhere in there.
Oh.
It's not always Converse, but some kind of pair, some kind of red shoes is in each story. And so when you know that, then anytime that you read one of my books, you have to be on the lookout that
Yeah,
there's a pair of red shoes in there hidden
I love
Nice.
that. That's so sweet.
Oh, now we're gonna
That's
look
so
for
cool
it.
Yeah.
that you use your son's shoes on Moulin.
Yeah.
That's really
That's
cool.
cute. I love that. Oh my goodness. So cute. Oh. Do you have a
You have the
newsletter, Katie, that we can subscribe to?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So the
Okay.
newsletter is just at my website, katiepowner.com is where the
Okay.
sign up.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna sign up tonight because I thought I signed up, but I don't think I have. And you've been on my list for years, and now I feel really guilty that your first 5 books didn't do great. And I'm like, man, I should have bought those books, but hopefully I'll buy them
Yeah.
later this year.
Apparently you weren't the only one. So
Okay, good. Well, readers, we love to support authors, and we want to buy all the books. We just can't always afford to buy all the books. So
no, yeah, no, I totally get it.
that's
So
where
many
libraries
books,
come in.
so little
Libraries are
time.
huge too.
Yeah. Libraries. Sure.
So where are you active on social media? Is it just Facebook or do you do Instagram
I have
or
Instagram and Facebook, yeah. And I try to get on there when I can.
yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah.
of work to put together a post or like make a video or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of time. So
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of extra time. So
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just coming up with the random weird ideas that will actually, you thought, oh, I texted Jamie Joe Wright today and said, all right, Jamie, I double dog dare you to grab your newest book and take a reel of you stroking the book and saying, the precious. She thought that was pretty funny.
so did she do it?
I think
funny.
she's gonna because she's like, oh, there's probably a filter for that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. And she probably
So I'll
was
have
excited
to
because she's like, oh, somebody gave me an idea. I don't, because that is the
Think-
hard part. You're trying to come up with
Yeah.
ideas of
a
what to
clever idea.
talk about,
Yeah.
you know.
We did one with Jamie, Emily, and I. Last October, Jamie was going to something in Chicago, and she asked me if she could come stay over at my house overnight, so she didn't have so far to go the next morning. So I'm like, fine, I'm gonna rope you into doing an Instagram reel. So
Yeah.
we went over to Emily's apartment, took some pictures of Jamie with her stack of books, but Jamie hid behind Emily's couch, and I sat on the couch all curled up trying to pretend to read her book. Emily comes in, oh, what you doing? And oh, I'm reading this book. And we're sitting there, we're both going, oh, that's kind of scary. And all of a sudden, Jamie just scared the crap out of both of us. Hopped up behind the couch going, how is the story?
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's
she
awesome.
genuinely got me. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
And it was so funny. And I want to say that video's got like close to 5,000 views. It's just
Yeah.
hysterical.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Nicole
But
did it
it
in
was
one
a lot of
take.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Fantastic.
one take. And I just said, hey, kind of think about it this way, but I didn't have any, script for anybody to follow. I just had some ideas, but it
Okay.
worked great.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just, gotta come up with the random weird ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I
Well,
did find out
have
that
any other
authors are
questions?
happy to collab.
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, I really want to add your books to my TBR, higher on my TBR, because I think you're delightful. Are you going to be at Midsummer Mingle at Baker Bookhouse this year? Did I see your name
I
on there?
didn't
For some reason, I
even
thought I
I didn't
did.
even know about it, so
Oh,
probably
okay.
not.
That's in June. I wasn't sure if you were going to be on there or somebody else. So I was at Baker Bookhouse in Grand Rapids. So that's a bit of a haul for you, but yeah.
That's one of the hard things. Nothing is nearby to me at
Yeah.
all. So everything, like any conference, or like the rendezvous or the
Yes.
things where people kind of do combined author events and stuff, those
Mhm.
they're always very far away. So
Yeah.
that's hard
Yeah.
for me to.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for answering all of my questions. I know I've asked a lot of them, and I thank you you've given a lot of great information, very helpful. So thank you so
Yeah,
much. You have finally answered all of mine. I'm tapped out, but appreciate you.
great. Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. This was so fantastic. It gives me so much more to think about for my stories and stuff like that. And
Awesome.
yeah, it's really good. Thank you so
I'm
much.
happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Emily's got plenty of real life examples. She's one of 6 kids.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
boys, 3 girls, kind of the Brady Bunch is the wrong order. So,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
have
that's
9,
mine.
soon to be 11 nieces and nephews. Yeah.
Yep.
Ranging
Use
from the
it.
oldest
Yeah.
is 12, the youngest is like 4 months. Yeah. 4 months, 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
4 months. Yeah. Yeah. They're a lot of fun.
There's lots there to use.
Never a dull moment for sure.
Yeah,
Great.
Did say
family
the
dynamics
darndest
are
things. I was like,
Yeah. Just write it down.
oh yes,
You think you remember, but you won't, so you got to write it down.
I do. Yes, yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm always good for the random, really odd comment. Like I said, as I was a nurse and I'd worked in a nursing home for a while, we had this older gentleman who was just a freak about having his blood sugar taken, and he always wanted to be the first one to have his blood sugar done before lunch. So he'd come around at 10 o'clock in the morning, way too early to have it checked because they didn't serve lunch till 11:30. Wasn't gonna check it that early. And I finally got tired of it one day and I asked him if he was related to a vulture. And he kind of looked at me like, what? And everybody at the desk stopped and stared at me like, what are you doing? And I said, well, you're constantly circling the desk waiting to descend.
Yeah.
Good one, Lisa.
Did it stop him from coming back as early, Lisa?
No.
No, yeah. No.
But it made him laugh.
That's
And he
good.
liked it because he was always giving everybody crap and I gave it right back to him.
There
Yeah.
you go.
So he absolutely loved me because I didn't take it from him.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's always the weird stuff that if you're nice to people, you can get away with the little bit of the snark.
That
Yeah.
is very true. Yeah.
Mm.
I was always good for throwing a glove full of ice at somebody and saying, you look like you could use a hand. Just dumb stuff like that. You must be tired, Emily. I didn't think that was that funny.
I am slap
Yeah.
happy right now. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
good day.
Yeah,
but a
I think
busy day.
we probably should wrap it up before we all
Yeah.
fall apart. So
Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Katie. This was just
Yeah.
amazing.
yeah, it was really great to talk with you guys. And don't forget that you can still join the launch team by tomorrow if you
Okay.
want to. So
We
Thank
move
you.
fast.
yeah.
I wish. I've got too much going on right now.
Yeah, it's a short notice, but
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks
thank you
for the
so
invite,
much.
though.
Really appreciate you.
Yep. Thanks.
Sure.
Mm.
All right. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.